Hi, everyone. Let me start with a question. How many of you know about cell-based food? Can you please raise your hand? Okay, I see there is only very few people, although we are in a conference in a setting where we talk about food. Just to give you a few words now before I start, then after you'll see a slide and explain that more in detail. So cell-based food in general is food created in a lab starting from a cell. And it will replicate ideally the final product similar to the one that you now have at the moment. So for instance, you can have a cell-based tuna, which will be similar to the tuna that you eat at the moment. Why this is important? Why industry is going into this direction? So there is, as we know, and also some presenters before said, an increasing population. By 2100, the UN estimates there would be 10.4 billion people. The eating habits are changing. More and more people are eating more and more animal proteins. In EU, every person in a year eats on average 23.5 kilos of seafood. That is a lot compared to decades ago. Last one, countries are becoming more and more wealthy, which means that also countries where before the main source of food was rice or grains in general, now are eating more animal proteins. In terms of sustainability for the environment, overfishing, 37% of stocks that we know are overfished, which means we are depleting the stocks of these animals. A few decades ago, aquaculture started to become very prominent, trying to support the fishing. So we can farm animals, we don't have to catch them wild, so we give them time to replenish. However, there are a lot of concern also in terms of the sustainability practice around many of these aquaculture farms. So antibiotics in the water, these fish that are in big nets, million and million of fish that eat each other and whatever. And then it's, of course, it's a business opportunity. So industry is coming into this world of novel protein where they see that they can make a huge profit, good money. History, a little bit of history. 1931, we're talking about 100 years ago, Winston Churchill said, we should escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken in order to eat the breast or wings by growing these parts separately under a suitable medium. So already 100 years ago, Winston Churchill had the idea, it's a waste if we have to grow a full animal to eat just part of it. 2003, for a art conference, art exhibition actually, two scientists prepared from some cells two frog steaks the size of a coin. In the last 10 years, this industry has started to really develop. In 2013, Mark Post, a professor at university in the Netherlands, developed the first ever cell-based beef burger that could be tried and eaten. There is a lot of regulation into this. Governments have to check the safety. This has to be obviously safe for human consumption. In 2020, Singapore marked the first country in the world to approve an animal created in a lab, and it was chicken. Now in Singapore, you are able to buy cell-based chicken. Some other countries followed suit. 2023, US, still for chicken. 2024, beef in Israel and quail in Singapore. So as you can see, until May this year, no country in the world had approved yet any seafood animal created in a lab. The research is a little bit behind seafood compared to avian or terrestrial animals. However, now, 2025, this is possible in US. In Europe, there is nowhere you can buy meat or seafood made in a lab. There's an organization called the European Food Safety Agency, EFSA, I'm sure you're aware of. They are the one who actually have to approve the process, the technology. As you can see, as I was saying, there are not many companies focusing on seafood. Most of them are on meat. By now, in the world, there are 112 companies working on seafood, cell-based. First company started in 2017. From 2020, there's been a boom. And 40% of them have headquarters either in US or in Singapore. Now, let's go into details. What is the technological process behind it? It all starts with the collection of cell from the animal. This cell is then put into, just let's not go through all the details, but it gets put, it's fed, gets given nutrition, it expands, then is put on a scaffold, so on a sort of structure to give it a sort of tridimensionality, otherwise the cell will grow just flat. Then we'll put in a bioreactor where it grows and grows and grows, and eventually we harvest the cells and we have the final product. At this stage, there is nowhere, we are nowhere close to mimic the exact same texture, taste, smell, consistency, everything of a seafood, but we are getting there with ease. One important element is to study whether people will be willing to eat it, because we can have the most fancy innovation process, but if people are not willing to eat, there is nowhere in the world companies will continue pursuing this road. It's a lot of billion to invest, and if they don't get a profit, this is going to go out of the window. So what it's important to do is to study the consumer acceptance. At the moment, there are very limited studies on cell-based seafood, if people would accept it or not. Now, let me ask you a question. After this explanation, considering that the industry will put on the market a product that is exactly the same in terms of taste, obviously safe, smells the same, how many of you would you switch a tuna fillet or salmon with a one made in a lab? Can you please raise your hands? Okay, I've managed to convince a few of you, not many, to be honest, but that's normal. That's part of the process. The studies on consumer acceptance focus for the moment on obviously sensory attributes. Has to have good flavor, has to look similar, has to have the same texture, psychological attributes. So many people are scared about what they don't know, and that's called neophobia. There is also the environmental attitude. Is it really going to be better for the environment to have more factories emitting to create food? Other can be cultural attributes like ethics, religion, or other can be the labeling. How do I name the product? If I call it synthetic meat, is it more appealing? If I call it cell-based meat, is it more appealing? Like also these are factors that are important for consumers. So what we have done, we have tried to explore the potential consumer acceptance for this novel food in a context of different countries in Europe. In the survey that we have collected, we have distributed a survey and we have collected some parts, some questions, demographics, eating habits. So if they are omnivore, flexitarian, following the definition that we saw before, some psychological factor, but also the most important part, which is this stated preference experiment. What is that? It's an experiment in which we present respondents with hypothetical choice. So we tell them, let's assume that you are at the supermarket and these are the only three options that you have to buy a product, a seafood product, assuming that you like seafood, right? So you can have a salmon that is caught, wild caught in Italy. It does not have any sustainable certification, but it does have a microplastic-free certification. It costs €5 for a portion. Or it's from aquaculture with these characteristics, or it's cell-based with these characteristics. So we give respondents several of these tasks where these characteristics here vary according to a design that is pre-established, and we see how they respond. Now, I don't want to spend much time on the type of models that we have used, but you will see the results in a bit. the sample. We focused on 4 countries. So 2 of them are Portugal and Hungary, because these are the 2 countries at the 2 extremes in Europe for seafood consumption per capita. Portugal, they eat the most seafood per year. Hungary, they eat the least. And then we have Netherlands and Italy. These are the 2 countries with the most opposing view in terms of openness to technology, especially when it comes to food. Netherlands, very innovative. Italy, super conservative. To give you an example, Italy signed a request for legislation to ban cell-based food, and it's not even on the market, right? Main results, Portugal. So what we have done, we have tried to understand if within any country, there are different groups of preferences. These groups are defined by characteristics of the population. Maybe males, rich people can think of something, female, poor people can think of another. So in our best model for Portugal, we have 2 classes, 79 and 21. In the class 1, we have people that are male, more likely to be male, older, and that is more or less more often. Now, what are the results? These people are not willing to accept cell-based seafood. Their preference is for wild food, followed by aquaculture, which is similar to none. So I would rather not have food than having a cell-based food. Then, in terms of product, they prefer tuna and salmon the same, but better than shrimp. In terms of origin, if it's made in Portugal or if it's made in EU, it doesn't really matter, but these are preferred from a non-EU product. It's important that it's microplastic free, more than being sustainable. And then there's a trade-off of price. Obviously, the lower, the better. Second class, partially open to cultured cell-based seafood, only 25%, 21%, where wild is still preferred, farm is the second one. Now, cell-based is better than nothing. So if I don't have any other choice, okay, I'll have it. No prepared product, the origin doesn't matter. Microplastic free certification is very important. And these are very highly price sensitive. So the price has to be very low for them to accept it. Now, is there anyone in the audience from Hungary? No. Is there anyone in the audience from Italy? I saw a few. Okay, let's go to the Italian results. So we have found 2 classes, almost precisely enough. First class belongs more likely belong people who are married, have no children, have high income. These people do not accept cell-based seafood. Again, wild is preferred to farm, which is equal to none, which is preferred to cell-based. I'm not going to have cell-based. I prefer not to have seafood at all.
The last 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. The origin is very important. Italy, the product has to be made in Italy. It's preferred there. If it's made in the EU, it's okay, but origin in Italy is preferred. Again, microplastic specification, environment sustainability. And then the price is seen as a proxy of quality. The higher the price, the better it is, which means there is a connection with the quality for them. In the second group, partially open again. None is the least preferred option, so I'd rather have cell-based than none. The Netherlands, very quickly, they are partially open. We have 3 classes here. One is this one, the biggest one, partially open, with the wild and farm that are the same, preferred to cell-based and none, similar to here. And then there's a third one, where they are again cell-based seafood again. So 2 of them are a little bit mostly open, so 75% plus 25% is not. Certification does not matter in one, certification matter in the other one. Now, economic implication. We could estimate how much people are willing to pay for these products. In Portugal, up to 37% for wild seafood, compared to only €3 for cell-based. That's a huge difference. If you compare to Hungary, €9 compared to €6, the difference is not that much. For Italy, it's hard to frame maximum economic values because we have a class where people prefer to pay more because they think it's higher quality. So we don't have that maximum. just to give you some conclusions, there are clear differences across member states. With Hungary and the Netherlands are the most open, as expected, compared to Portugal and Italy, as expected Italy. The origin of the product is very important, very valuable, especially in Italy. You know, made in Italy, made in Italy, made in Italy as a citizen, they really drill that in your head. Certifications are important, but the microplastic free is way more important than sustainability, which means people care more about their own health than the nature, the sustainability of the planet, which kind of makes sense. And the willingness to pay varies a lot across the countries. Dutch respondents are willing to pay the most for cell-based seafood. So if I was an industry, I would probably target this country first and see to gain a little bit of market there, raise awareness. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to go with them.